Thank you for joining us today.
Awesome. Shall we start? Yeah. Okay. So hi everyone. I hope you are all doing well despite the current circumstances. As you can see on your screen, my name is Anudari, and I am one of the RAs from the PGSSC. And I first want to thank all my fellow RAs for taking the time to be here and take the time to answer everybody's question. And also want to thank everybody else who joined us. Because you're interested. I think it is great that you take time to inform yourself, before taking any decision. But before starting the Q&A, I just wanted to acknowledge, the social movement that is going on right now, and how in the US and worldwide, everybody is, fighting in unity against racial injustice and racism. And I think for me, this is just another proof yet again of the importance of being engaged, for the causes that we care about. Participating in one way or shape or form. And I would also assume that if you are here today with us, it is because you care about delivering safe care to everyone who needs it. And I commend you for that. And I really hope that this session will be informative for you, and that hopefully you will decide to join our team and contribute in your own unique way. And also, if you have any questions throughout the Q&A, feel free to write it in the chat box. We'll go back to your questions then. But first, we have a quick presentation of the general structure of the program, because I know it can be confusing. What's an RA? What's a fellow? Who's doing what? And also, we wanted to present a little bit about our team and the people who make it so special and so unique. And I think that's all of my colleagues that are present here today and who are also not present. So. Sorry. Okay, so I think first of all, we need to talk about deadlines, because this is very important. I know a lot of us lost the notion of time because of the lockdown. I don't even know what day of the week it is. But the deadline for this application is July 31st. And then that means that application is for you to start in July 2021. So it is almost a year in advance. And there are reasons why it was put that way, and we're gonna talk about it later. But don't forget, July 31st, 2020, that's when all your information, all your application, administrative documents, and so on need to be either emailed to Rima, who is behind the PGSSC Boston email, or sent by mail to our address in Boston that you can see on the screen. Now, I think this is one big question that everybody's probably wondering: what's a fellow, what's an associate? So the research fellow, so all of it is a research fellowship. Within that fellowship, there are different positions. So if you're a research fellow, that's a 2-year position. So you have 2 years off from whatever you're doing right now. And then you join our team as a research fellow. In order to do so, you need to either be a current surgical trainee or a resident, depending on the terminology that you use. But you have to be in either a surgical subspecialty, an OBGYN, or anesthesia, because the focus of our program is on SOA care. And during those 2 years, what a lot of fellows end up doing is that they do an MPH at 45 credit part-time. So at the same time as doing the fellowship, they also do a master's in public health at the Harvard School of Public Health, which is right next to our office. Now, the reason why you're probably here is because you're interested in a research associate position, and that is a 1-year position. So from July, in your case, it will be from July 2021 until July 2022. And that position is for medical students and graduate students in a health-related degree. In our team right now, all of us are mainly medical students or young medical school graduates. And in this position, because it's 1 year, you don't really have the possibility to do the MPH at Harvard at the same time, because it's just a lot to do in 1 year. So now that we have the backbone of the program, my friend Lota will kind of present you the rest of our team.
Thank you, Anudari. So the first person we wanted to present in the team is Rima, because she is very much the backbone of PGSSC. So If you have been in touch with PGSSC by email or so, you've most likely spoken to Rima, and she is the one that helps together with some of the other PGSSC team to onboard incoming team. Next, we want to introduce the faculty, and here you can see the PGSSC faculty. It's a great team of a very diverse team with a wide range of backgrounds and specialties and different fields of research interests. And so the program is headed by Dr. John Mira and Dr. Paul Farmer. And then most or all of these faculty members lead different initiatives within PGSSC. So many of them lead different country teams or other research groups. And another important crucial member of our team is the visiting scholars. And this year we have 2 visiting scholars, which is Laura Pompermeyer, who's here on the call with us today, and then Michelle Joseph. And the position visiting scholar is similar to the research fellow position in the sense that it's a 2-year position. However, this is a more senior position intended for medical doctors who have already received a PhD degree. And then amongst the research fellows, we have 2 sets of, or 2 cohorts of fellows. So we have those that are now completing their 2nd year, and then those that are now completing their 1st year. So only the ones that are completing their 1st year will be staying on to next year, except for Paul Truchet, who is here at marked in red, who's, I believe, also on the call here today. And then sometimes some fellows stay on for a 3rd year. So that's what Paul is doing, and that's what Lina Roa has been doing as well, the first fellow on the screen.
I'll be here. Nice to meet you all.
And then we want to introduce the RAs who are here today and are ready to answer your questions. So I'm going to hand over the floor to the RAs to introduce themselves. And first off is Hiba Gandur.
Hi guys, so thanks Lotta and Anudari for organizing this. My name is Hiba, I'm originally from Lebanon. I'm a research associate and I've worked a little bit on Pakistan projects this year and Tanzania. Happy to answer your questions during this call or after. You can reach out to me via social media and more than happy to discuss things further.
Thank you, Hiba. Next up is myself, and I don't think I introduced myself. So my name is Lotta Vellen, and I am from Sweden. I'm in the last year of medical school, and I've mainly worked in Rwanda this year.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Jean-Wilkins Latig. I'm a final year medical student from Haiti. And at the PGSSC, I work in Haiti on research through my capacity building, and also I work with the Global Neurosurgery Initiative.
Hi again, everyone. As I said earlier, my name is Anudari. I'm a medical student at McGill University in Montreal, Canada. And this year I mainly worked in India and also with the Southern African Development Community, which is an aggregate of 16 countries in Southern Africa. And I also worked with the Center for Global Surgery Evaluation for projects related to out-of-pocket expenditure and health economics.
Hi guys, my name is Nabil. Thank you, Anudari, for organizing this. I am from Pakistan. I was a research associate. I was working mainly on projects from Pakistan and got an opportunity to work on some cost effectiveness analysis with Dr. Mark Schreib.
Hi everyone, my name is Ellie. It's nice to meet all of you or see all of you. I'm a medical student at University of Miami. I'm from the United States. This past year, I was the RA on Team Mexico, so I spent a good part of this year working in southern Mexico. And I've also been involved in some of the US-based projects, especially related to plastic surgery.
Hello everyone, I'm Sydney. I'm originally from Cameroon. I was working on the global neurosurgery projects as well as conference and the Southern African Development Community projects.
Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine. I'm a medical student at the University of Alabama. And this year I worked on Team Brazil, and I also did some projects with the neurosurgery group.
You're muted, Matthias.
Hi everyone, my name is Matthews. I'm from Brazil, and the last year I've been working with the team US, the team from Sudan, and the team in Brazil. I'm from the University of São Paulo in São Paulo, Brazil.
Good. So before, a lot of us were, since we started the application process, a lot of people reached out to us, and then we aggregated some of the questions that people ask the most often, and then we want to go over them with you, believing that those are the main questions that you also want to ask. And then after that, we'll also have more of a live Q&A session, more of a discussion. Feel free to ask any question you want, and we will try to be as honest as possible and as helpful as possible. So first of all, I think one question that people always have a difficulty with is like, when do you choose to apply, and why did you choose to apply to the PGSSC and join the PGSSC team? I think taking a year off from a med school or any school that we were doing, and then deciding to move to another country, to another city, it is a big decision. And a lot of people ask us, why why did you take that decision? So I guess I'll open the floor, and then I'll ask some of the other RAs to jump in. I think for me, there is a set of things we learn in medical school that are very much important. But when I was thinking of, I guess, my long-term career and the way that I wanted to contribute even before starting medical school and what were important for me, that was more of like population-based approach, I guess. We don't have that much exposure in medical school. And that's why I thought integrating the PGSC year experience within my medical training, it was just essential for me to start off with the right set of experience, right set of skills for the long-term career that I'm hoping to have, and to also connect with people that share the same value and will help me grow as a person. And I thought it was an important step in my life at this point. Any other RAs?
I think we can also invite Laura and Paul. If you want to jump in, please feel free also.
I'm going to jump in and add just a very quick note. I personally graduated med school last year, and I didn't take a year through my med school. It was after my med school to join PGSSC, because it was a transitory point for me to move from med school into my surgical training eventually, but I wanted to dive into global surgery before that, which had to do a lot of policy making, public health, joining with surgery. So that's my perspective.
And I think just adding to what Hiba and Anu have both said, I think for medical students, this serves as a really unique opportunity to gain exposure in research or in policy or in advocacy, whatever element you're really interested in. And we'll talk more about what the year looks like, but you have this really unique opportunity to take a year and work with unique people in very diverse settings, and really just gain specific and unique skill sets that you wouldn't really have the opportunity to learn during the rest of your medical school.
For me, I joined the program because, my country experienced an earthquake in 2010, and I was kind of young, but I realized there was a lack of emergency care, and the surgical and emergency care system is not the best. So I wanted to do something and help. And through my pathway to this, I've been in the local medical student association. First I joined med school, then I've been to the medical student association in Haiti, and then I learned about this program, and I've been on the website and talking to the research associates, and I just realized that was one of the best ways to have the experience and a skill set to be able to come back home and to try and make a change.
I'm just gonna add, Nabil here. I had been working with PGSSC fellows and research associates. It's amazing how quickly the network is growing. I was encouraged by the research associates and the fellows at that time to apply. I am a person who is interested in surgery and in health systems research. This is kind of like one of the most ideal platforms to sign up on, and it's highly competitive. But don't feel like left out if you don't make it. But it's definitely worth trying, and if I can do it, or all of us can do it, you guys can do it as well.
And I think one thing that you will probably see throughout this Q&A is that all of us came with a very different bag of experiences and skill set, and that throughout the year, you won't find two RAs who had the same year, because it was very, very, very different based on the countries we're working, the projects we're working on, and the faculties we're working with, who had a very wide range of experience, and we're hoping that you'll get a better sense of it with this presentation. So let's move on with, I guess, the core sets of questions that we had. I kind of split it in 4 categories. So first of all, of course, a lot of people have had questions about the application process, which is fair. You can find, a lot of information on the website, the PGSSC.org. But some specific questions actually struck my attention. It was, first of all, how much global health, global surgery experience do you need prior to apply to join the program? And as I said, I think it's very different for all of us. In my case, I already worked in global surgery before. So 2 years and a half before joining PGSSC, I had started a global surgery project in Mongolia, which is my home country, with the Center for Global Surgery at my school. And I was very involved, that was specifically in health system, trauma system, trauma training. So in that sense, I had experience coming in, but also I know there were, for instance, in terms of policy, I didn't have that much experience. In terms of hardcore research, I wasn't the most experienced. I did do research, but not as much as some of the other RAs. How about you guys? What kind of experience did you have before joining us?
Maybe I can jump in just for this one. I think there's really no right answer for this question. I mean, there are many factors that are being taken into account when you apply to the PGSSC, and research experience is one component. But for example, a strong interest is also very important, and other types of qualities. And for me, I didn't have a lot of research experience, partly because research experiences or research opportunities for students in Sweden are pretty hard to get at. I'd been trying to get in touch with research for a long time, but it had been really hard to get involved. And so I mainly had experience with global health through NGO work. So I'd been very active in civil society. I was a part of the Swedish National Youth Council. I was a part of like a UN youth representative. I was part of the IFMSA, which is the International Federation of Medical Students Associations, and different organizations like that. So I had been engaged in these topics, but I had very limited research experience personally.
I'm just going to jump in and just reiterate what Lotta mentioned. There's no one correct algorithm or profile that you need to have to be accepted. They take into consideration your passion, but also some of your involvement. So you need to have shown commitment in the past. For me, I also worked with IFMSA, and I can tell a lot of our participants today are from IFMSA, so hi to every one of you. And your work over there shows commitment and dedication to the work of global health, and that's great. I had worked with IFMSA for 3-4 years before that, and I had also 3 to 4 years of research experience. But again, there's no one correct algorithm.
Yes, I think I'm gonna repeat kind of the same. It's like for me, I didn't have any real research experience before joining. I know that when you apply, you can be worrying about this. So I'm not saying that research experience is not something more that can, strengthen your case and make you a suitable candidate. Yes, but you don't have to have any to be accepted. And also, I know that a lot of you are international medical students. You English is not your primary language, to perform well in the program, I mean, because you need writing skills and you have to be able to speak English and to write in English. But I will tell you that before joining the program, my English wasn't the best one. So I want to reassure you that even though you feel limited in with your English capability, it's not a barrier. So you can apply, and it's you. I mean, I guess if you can be in that meeting, you have at least a basic English capability. So don't feel shy about that or limited. I wanted to add this because I think that could be a worry for some of you.
I'm happy to jump in, having been on the spent 2 years through the application cycle, reviewing applications for RAs as well as fellows. There is definite, to echo what everyone has said so far, there's no one right or wrong thing that we're looking for in an application. And we really try to look holistically at everyone's applications. And we do a pretty good job of really reviewing, every letter of recommendation you include, your entire CV, what your past experiences are. And we understand that everyone comes from different countries, different situations, and so that the possible research experiences and things that people have access to vary, widely depending on where you're going to medical school, where you went to undergraduate, what country you're living in, and we do take that into account. So I would say that if you are interested in doing this fellowship, and you have the research associate position, and you have a genuine interest in global surgery, you should apply pretty much regardless of what you think your experience is like, because very often we look at things that you might not even think of in order to select people who are fantastic. And many of those skills are not just research experience. Many of those skills are other skills like social intelligence and things that can be evident through things that you've done that you may not realize is that representative of your skills working in the policy setting, working with a research team and learning. We understand that everyone's coming with different backgrounds as far as research goes, and we are constantly trying to build our program to be better and include more instruction for research, statistics, policy writing, all of those sorts of things. So we understand that you don't have to have done it all to come here and be a research associate. So I implore all of you to apply if you're interested.
I think one question that I actually forgot to write is, a lot of people ask me like a survival kit, like with a list of like articles they should know, or like if they should know all the statistics related to global surgery, like 5 billion people don't have access, like a third of the global burden of disease is surgical, like things like that. I just want to let you know that there's so many things that's published all the time, like every day there are things published, so you don't need to keep track of the whole thing. But I do think it is important that, especially if you're interested in this field, that you know the main components, the last information on global surgery, and then some of the key events that happen afterward, and some of the key projects, organizations that's working in the field. I think it's important, like the minimum at least.
Yeah, just what she said. I want to build upon what Anu you said. It's also important to know like local context, maybe because that helps. And if not a local context, maybe a regional context. Find something of your interest. You don't have to know just the overall macro level statistics about access to surgical care in one place. Find one place that's close to your heart, and look for the disparities in healthcare and surgery that exist. And surprisingly, like, I don't think there's anywhere in the world right now where disparities don't exist. Find those, connect those. It's all out there. It's just about finding the approach. Once you get familiar with the approach, you start building upon your experience. And yes, find good mentors. Thankfully, we have people talking about, we have surgeons talking about research in health systems, and that's a big win over the last 10 years.
Lotta, for the next section, you're muted.
Sorry, I was on mute. Does anybody want to add anything else on the application process, or should we move on? All right, let's move on to the second set of questions, which is about the research fellowship experience. So the first question is, how are RAs assigned to specific teams or projects? Is there anybody who wants to answer this question?
Let me jump in. So I think there's a couple factors that can determine how you are assigned to teams or projects. But for me, it was all about my interests. First, I'm interested in health systems and training in Haiti. So I'm lucky enough to have a team Haiti at PGSSC. So I've been assigned to that team. And secondly, I'm interested in becoming a neurosurgeon. So there's a global neurosurgery initiative, and I've been working with them. And also about projects, PGSSC is this place where you are pretty free, and there's a loose in terms of projects you can join. So you could just be in a morning report talking with a couple fellows and RAs, and then something come up and you discuss about this, and you just realize that that's a new project, and then you just start it. And whoever wants to join, you just jump in if you're interested. So I think it's about interest, and also engage in debate and discussion with your fellow as I know, because we are now it's virtual. For the 2020 team, it could be a bit challenging, but for the 2021 team, even though I hope everything will be back to normal, but I think that that's a very important part in terms of projects in PGSSC.
Thank you, Wilkins. I think you touched both on question 1 and question 2 here. And I agree with you that it's a very dynamic program. So I think what the projects that are going on in the beginning of the year are not the same as at the end of the year, because new ideas come up based on discussions we have in our Thursday morning report and so on. So like Wilkins was saying, I think, being curious and trying to get involved in the new opportunities that arise is a really good idea. However, as an RA, you may not be able to start a new project all by yourself, but if you do find a fellow, for example, that is interested in the same topic as you, there may be opportunities to start new projects depending on the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always new opportunities, and the team is so supportive, super friendly. I personally had a huge interest in policy. I've been working in policy for a couple of years. Early on in the year, there was an opportunity for some meeting, which was the interagency expert group for the Sustainable Development Goals. It was in Ethiopia. I was really interested in it. I reached out to faculty. I had some fellows supporting me. Paul is here, and we were able to mobilize some change. I was able to attend the meeting, and it was definitely a new project and something I'm very, very happy to have done, but I wouldn't have been able to do it without the support of everyone encouraging me to pursue a new project. So definitely, the team is super open to hear your ideas and your passion.
Thank you, Hiba. I think another thing too, that is an important deciding factor in what team you may join is, like Wilkins was saying, your interest. Like, for example, if you're very interested in anesthesia, currently we're working on anesthesia projects in India, so then maybe that will seem like a good fit for you. But it may be also factors like language skills. So Ellie, who worked in Mexico, she speaks Spanish. I do not. I would not be probably considered for the Mexico team. So there are many different factors like that. But if you do get accepted or you're considering applying, there's also this opportunity to have a conversation about it. Maybe we should move on to the next question. Does everyone have the opportunity to travel abroad? Is there anybody who feels like answering this question?
I feel like it also goes back to interest.
Oh, go ahead, Hiba.
Thanks, Ellie. I'll be done in a second. So it depends on interest. So if you're someone who is really passionate about traveling abroad to be able to experience other cultures and experience, research, collaborating with other teams, you will get that chance if you express that interest. Some people this year in our team said that they would not prefer to travel and they wanted to stay here, either to be able to learn more about research in the US, improve their English language, etc. So it goes back to interest. Ellie, over to you.
Just to add to that, I think also this speaks to what was mentioned earlier about every RA, every fellow having a really different experience. So depending on what team you might be working on, the team might be starting a project or in the middle of a project. And so the demands of different teams vary. So I think when you are, interested in joining, that's something to really consider, and thinking about, do you want to stay in the US and work on more US based projects, or are you interested in being on a team where, for example, Lota was in Rwanda for almost the whole year? So I think that it definitely varies, but that's something that's important to consider.
I think that's a
add
good
on
point.
that.
Oh, go ahead, Anne.
That I think Lota and Ellie spent a lot of time abroad, and wasn't so much in Boston. But in my case, I was assigned to quite a few projects, and so I did a lot of back and forth. So for India, I went for, let's say, 3 weeks, and I came back. I did the work remotely, then went to Tanzania, came back, India again, came back. I went to Mongolia for my own work. So I did travel a little bit more, and I think starting the year, I wasn't so much interested in staying in one place, maybe just Boston or just a country. And I think they take also that into account in assigning to projects.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one comment, also saying that I think it's really great to consider what you're interested in before you join. But then I think also it's great to keep an open mind. For me, I was asked when I was accepted if I could spend 9 months in Rwanda. And when I saw that email, I was a bit unsure if that was what I wanted, because I realized that normally the PGSSC program is Boston based, and it would be very different for me than the kind of typical PGSSC experience. So I was a bit nervous about that. I thought 9 months seemed like a really long time, and what if I don't like it? But I've had the most wonderful time, and I wouldn't have wanted to have it in a different way. So I think still keeping an open mind, because I think whatever way it turns out, I'm sure you'll appreciate it.
Yes, if I can add something, I would say that from my perspective is that the PGSSC is trying to expose the RAs at the highest level of research and policy meetings in the field. So it can be traveling abroad, but also traveling within the USA to attend conferences. So, and this will be linked with sometime if you submit abstract, and if you have an abstract accepted, you are very likely to attend this meeting and present your research and network with new people and experts in the field. And if the conference is abroad, you will go abroad, and if it's within the US in different states and Massachusetts, you will be able to join this. As for me, I've been able to travel back and forth from between Haiti and Boston, because I told you I'm interested in Haiti, and also I really wanted to have an experience in Rwanda, because I think Rwanda is hope, represents some kind of hope for any Black nation now because of what they are doing. That's very personal, but I wanted to share. So I wanted to see how it is, and I had the chance to attend the Surgical Society meeting, and that was a very good experience. So I think there's room for everything. PGSSC is pretty flexible on all those things. So it's about your interest, and you have to plan this, and also about the resources available, because sometimes there could be a lot of travel, and sometimes there could be much less, and it depends. So yeah, as we said, it's very flexible.
But there's also, I think, a limit. There's a budget limit. I think Rima, that's the point she wants to bring.
Well, no, I think you guys did a wonderful job, actually, summarizing everything. Everybody said something, and I was like, oh, this is what I want to add. So yes, everybody does have the opportunity to travel abroad. All teams are set up very differently. So, you know, things change pretty quickly. You may be going one direction in the project and all of a sudden stakeholders are saying something, we want to do this. And so that maybe happen. So Lota's point on being open-minded and open to different opportunities and ideas that may come is a very important one. One thing I do want to kind of just go over is, so another thing is there is a lot of travel that can be done in the United States. So, you know, one of the major events, which may not be happening this year, but we're not really sure, but one of the biggest events and our main events that happens in September is the UNGA. And that's kind of, that's a very, you know, fellows go, RAs go, and we go to a lot of these side events and to raise awareness for global surgery. And so that's one of the opportunities. Conferences as well. We're strongly encouraging you to submit abstracts and proposals for research projects. But one thing that I do want to clarify is it's not, I don't want it to come off as it's the free-for-all. So if it's like there's these 7 conferences that I want to go to and I've been accepted to all 7, we do have to kind of, you know, see what resources are available, how many people can be going. We also really do want to be equitable in our group. So say there's an individual who's gone to 4 and there's only another person that's only gone to 1. So there is some room for, I guess, discussion when that happens. But I just wanted to make sure that there are a lot of opportunities. And a lot of things do change when, you know, when we're actually there and seeing what resources are available.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'll give a different perspective to this. There are quite a few internationals here. So one thing you need to keep in mind is your possibility, the possibilities for you to travel depend a lot on your passport power as well. So you want to be aware of that. If you're getting into a project or you're planning travel, then you need to be aware of the different visa restrictions or difficulties that you might have. So while you might be interested in 3 different conferences, you need to realize that in certain cases, you might need to apply a month or 3 months in advance to go to certain countries. So that depends on everyone's nationality. So you need to be aware of that. If you're in the program and you're planning your travel, make sure you always think about that. The opportunities definitely do exist. So you want to separate, on the one hand, travel that's related with your projects, and on the other hand, travel that's related with science, as in presentations, abstracts, conferences, and finally, travel that's related with advocacy or high policy work. So you can come up with an assortment of travel. And like Rima said, there's a lot of travel to be done in the US as well. So it all depends, again, on your own possibilities and ambitions.
Thanks a lot, Ulrich. I see that we're already running short on time, but I think the next question is one of the most frequent ones and one of the ones that may be the most interesting. So I so want us to go through that thoroughly. And that question is, what does a normal day in the life of an RA look like? And like mentioned, this is totally different for all of us. But maybe a few of the RAs can share their experiences in this past year, just very briefly, so we can get a sense of what the year could look like.
I think it's, you know, we do have an office. So I think if you're in Boston, so whenever you're in Boston, you can come to the office, everybody's there, so it's fun. We end up talking more than we should, but I think that's the beauty of it. But it's very flexible. So there are specific times where you have to be at the office. For instance, the Thursday morning reports, it's like our ground rounds. And then we have the journal club on Friday. But other than that, it's very, very open. You can go work at a cafe, you can work from home, you can work at a library. And also it depends on the project you're working on. So based on your team, you will decide how many times a week you want to meet, where you want to meet, and what will be done during those meetings. So there is a bit of a flexibility. And I think, you know, on one side, it's great because you can kind of decide, you can make your schedule, especially if on a side you're studying for the USMLE, you can make your schedule. But at the same time, I think because it is not fixed structure, some people may have some difficulty setting maybe boundaries for themselves or setting a schedule for themselves. In my case, I know I am not the best at being like 6 p.m. I'm done. Now I'm enjoying my evening. I've never been able to do that. And you know, at PGSC as well, I was kind of working anytime, but I was also taking breaks whenever I needed to go for a run, go for social events, and that was my experience. And I think Jean posted the video. That's the video I made at the beginning of the year. It's more of a fun video. It's to show a Thursday, because Thursdays are like crazy busy, but the other days can be as busy or less busy, depending on your work.
Does anybody want to share a different perspective of what a normal day in their year has looked like?
Lotte, I was going to say, sorry, can we, I think there's like a lot of questions and people going to ask questions as well. Maybe we can race through the next points and then they can always contact us since they have our Twitter handles.
Point. So before we just move on to the next category, I just briefly want to say that the link that was shared is really helpful, I think, but also if you want to join the Thursday morning reports, you can send an email to the PGSSC email because they are open to the public. So you're welcome to join them from afar. All right, regarding funding, we could just begin by saying that the position is unfunded. And so first question, I think these are quicker questions. How much do you pay per month to live in Boston? I have personally only been for a month in Boston, so I leave this question to anybody else.
Matthias, I know you're good at it.
Yeah, I think I can talk a little bit about that. So to live in Boston, generally we pay like 1,600. Like Hiba, what do you think? Do you think it's like that's the average, right? Like for living expenses, food, and everything.
Yeah, I would say for living expenses along with your for food, transportation, and your rent, I would say I was really trying to save as much as I can, and I would have to touch around 1,500 a month. Internet's expensive here. You have to charge your phone. You need your transportation card. You need your electricity. So it usually mounts up to 1,500, I would say.
Yeah, so we agree with this amount, and I think that's what you need to have like a really good life in Boston, so you can like work in your project, you can work at PGSSC with like no problems for living. So, and it's a really important thing in PGSSC, especially for people who are from other countries, because like during the year, like the money that you have in your home country currency will change during the year. So you need to have like a plan and you need to have funding to have a really good life in Boston.
Yes, so if I can add something, I can be quick, is that we have to take in consideration that the actual funding living is not, it's not the same that the funding they require you in terms of administrative process. So if you are an international student, you will need to prove that you have at least 2,500 per month to have the administrative work being done in order to have your visa. So keep in mind that you will need $30,000 to prove to the U.S. Embassy in your country so you can apply for a visa. And also, I would say that maybe 80% of your living expenses is about housing. So I think that's very important that you choose well. You learn about housing, and if your housing is expensive, it cannot be high. And if you can find less expensive housing, it cannot be much less.
Thank you. And as mentioned, we're all willing to, I think, answer questions also beyond this call. So please feel free to reach out through the email or the Twitter or even the PGSC Instagram. This next question is, does the PGSC provide any financial support? I think I can just give this a quick answer. And it's, like I mentioned, an unfunded position, but PGSC does support conference travels and conference accommodation, conference registration, if it's approved. So, for example, for the UNGA, normally PGSSC will support a group from the team to go and then pay the associated expenses, or for research conferences, and particularly if you've had an abstract submitted, you're likely to get a financial support. But in terms of your first travel to Boston and going back home, and then also your stay throughout the year, your accommodation and so on, that's what you have to cover yourself. And then the next question is, do you recommend any external sources of funding? Does anybody want to answer that?
Yeah, I can just say for anyone on the call who's US based, I looked into different grants and funding opportunities that are available to US medical students. So if anyone is applying from the US, I'm happy to talk to them more about some of those, including like Doris Dukes or Fulbrights or other funding sources. So feel free to just send me a message because I have a big spreadsheet I can share.
Awesome, thank you, Ellie. Yeah, for me, I'm from Sweden, and there are some scholarships in Sweden as for the Society of Medicine and things like that, but I know this is very context specific. Does anybody else have anything you want to add in terms of external?
I would like to add for people who are applying from Brazil. So if you're applying from Brazil, there is a foundation called Fundação Estudar, and they give like a really good funding if you are applying for programs in US.
Great.
I think on my part, I was looking at fundings from Canada, and I didn't find a lot because they required us to stay at our own institution and not necessarily go to the US. But I just want to have like a sub question to that. A lot of people ask me if they can work in the US during the fellowship, you know, like working at night and things like that. The issue with that is when you come to the US, you get a J1 visa, and J1 visa doesn't really allow you to work at a restaurant or there. So it's kind of hard to have a job on a side.
Yeah, thank you, Anu. To make sure we stay on time, let's move on to the social life, and then we can have a few minutes in the end for the Q&A. So please send your questions in the chat box if you haven't already.
So for social life, I think everybody wants to know what kind of, I guess, vibe we have in our team. And I think it really, you know, the team is based off individual with different personalities, with different interests. But I think because we have such a wide array of people, you will connect with people and you will get that support easily. For among the RAs, I think this year we were quite close. You know, we were there to support each other, to talk, to eat together, to party together. And for me, those are one of the funnest memories that I have from this year. And of course, you may not agree with everybody, and I think it is fine. But that's where you engage and you work on your soft skill to debate respectfully, and then maybe agree to disagree. But I think that is just a part of being a team player and learning from each other and being professional. But the social life in itself, I think it was a very interesting to meet so many people with so many different backgrounds. Does anyone have anything specific about Boston they want to highlight?
You never run out of things to do on Boston. There's like this Boston calendar website which updates every week. You have more than 50 things to do for free, and then another 50 things you can do for a very, very low price. So you can go to yoga classes for free, art classes, go to museums. The list goes on and on. I won't talk too much because we need to open the floor for Q&A.
And also with your Harvard ID, you get a lot of discounts at museums and things like that. Okay. So I think I mean, there are things to do if you want to do them, and I think you'll find people to do it with you. Let's move on to, let's go to the live Q&A right away. So if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself, talk to us, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. I know we already have some questions in the chat box.
Anu, Laura here. Can I say something? Because I will reach the Brigham, and I think it will be pretty chaotic, so it's better that I speak now than during the manifestation. I would like just to say that the experience at the PGSSC is not just 1 year experience. During this time, you will develop a large network of people in the entire world that they can really be the beginning of a life project. For example, I have the luck to meet Lotta, who is from Sweden, and she will be a PhD student in Sweden because of this experience at the PGSSC. So be open-minded and come to us.
Awesome. Here, there's a few questions in the chat box, and I can see that Galaxy G7 Prime also raised his or her hand. So if you want to ask your question, feel free to do so. Okay, so in a question, Wei Ping Hung asked, what are the skill set the PGSSC Research Associates program is looking for?
I think Paul answered that question.
Yeah, it's it's not a checklist. You know, I think as long as you can show you can be a team player and you're ready to learn and you're passionate, I think you're good to go.
I would also just like to add to that actually very quickly.
Did you see this? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Rima.
Oh, I'm sorry, didn't realize you were. No, so one thing I did want to add actually is, yes, Anu's right, there's no checkbox or anything, but what I would really say, and I've seen this come across in our applications, is, you know, an individual who's like a self-starter, a motivator. I think, you know, one thing that we've seen and, you know, some of the individuals have touched upon is our structure is flexible and is very helpful to you, but I think that can be, it's good to have somebody or someone that we've seen who, you know, has a lot of passion and is motivated. An independent self-starter, I think, is something that's we'd like to see highlighted as well. So.
Thank you, Rima. Yeah, I was thinking about this question that has come in from Hassan from Somaliland. What type of exposure have you had so far in your year? What type of skills did you gain?
I think it's very different for every single RA because we're working on so many different projects. But I think before coming to the program, it's good to just check with yourself what are your own personal goals, and then try to work towards that. Because as I said, there's no fixed curriculum. You have to be proactive in your learning. There's a lot of resources within the Harvard network that become free with your position at the PGSSC, and you have to take advantage of that because nobody's gonna like force you to learn something if you don't have the motivation to do so yourself. For my part, there was a few things. So first, I wanted to improve my research skills, so Theta related. I wanted to learn geomapping, which I did, so ArcGIS. And then Harvard has an institution, and then they offer seminars and free consultations to which I attended. And on the other part, I also wanted to work with more like health economics related things, which I did. So I think it's good to have a mental kind of list of what you want to gain out of it. Does anybody else wants to pitch in?
I don't know if anyone's mentioned this yet, but I just wanted to add that we've also introduced starting this year a certificate in biostatistics that all of the RAs and fellows are going to participate in, and you'll leave PGSSC with a certificate in applied biostatistics that's administered through Harvard Catalyst. So that's another educational opportunity that's completely free that you will have access to as an RA by the time any of you guys come here.
Thank you, Paul. Ulrich, do you also just want to add a comment about the other Harvard resources that I know you've been using a lot?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of resources, edX, Harvard Catalyst, like I know Ray said everything. So there's enough resources. I was actually going to highlight a question asked by Anam Esan because I feel it's a bit special, and maybe Heba or Nabil can answer this about is the program flexible enough to allow for the match cycle application to take place during the RA-ship?
That's a good point.
I think definitely it would be, I haven't applied to the match this year personally, but the program is very understanding if you need to take time off to go for your interviews or anything of the sort. that's definitely possible. I'm not sure if Paul would like to add something to that.
Yeah, I would say that there's, John Mira, as the head of PGSSC is very flexible, and we understand, life issues and family issues, and I think most of the RAs can probably attest to the fact that, if something is going on and you need some time flexibility, this fellowship is not necessarily a 9-to-5 job, and we understand that, and so, family is very important, and so we understand that. So, there's as well as your career and whatever your other aspirations are. So there's a significant flexibility that we can work with you if you need to take time off. For people have studied for the STEP exams, people have done applications for residency and such, and so there is definitely flexibility.
And I would just like to quickly add to that, and something that's also been mentioned is a lot of your time here is also going to be dependent on how your team is structured, just internally with the fellow that you're working with, as well as your collaborators and your partners. So I would just say is if things like that are happening, or if that's something that's, on your mind, just communicate that early enough. And so that there is the structure and the time to take in place as to what you can and can't do during that time. But I would just say, again, that would be your own responsibility. And I can say for sure, we as a program, we have no issues with that. I guess just communicating it early enough and just letting us know is just important.
Thank you. Anu, maybe we can close with one final question from Nelson. What do you think?
Udeme Abasi Nelson?
Yes.
Yes, that was actually the question I was going for. So he first said, wonderful session so far. Thank you. It's our pleasure. So his question, he's asking, how do you balance the timing of application, sourcing for funds, and doing your compulsory house job as a young medical graduate? I think maybe Hiba, you would be a good person to ask, maybe Ulrich as well.
I'm going to leave the floor for Ulrich. I felt that I spoke so much today, and then I can add if anything is needed.
Hi, Nelson. So this is just the beginning of a long line of you having to do multiple things at once at the same time, because I would say it's the same rule as any other thing you're trying to do: time management, planning. So if you've decided you're going to apply for the program, you need to be aware of the eligibility criteria, and you need to be aware of what you need to do locally to get all these things sorted out. So while for certain folks it might be 1 year, it might mean that you need to start like a year and a half or maybe 2 years before, and you need to have a really well structured plan and follow up on all these things. About the time management skills, then you have to develop them, being able to use your Google Calendar or have a task list and going down that list one after the other. But you really need to be aware of your own environment, because no one else will be better aware of your environment than, than you.
My advice is I would start looking for funding as soon as possible. So I actually started applying for funding and looking for different opportunities at the same time I was applying for the PGSSC, because I knew that if I were to get accepted, it wouldn't leave me enough time to find funding. So I started about a year in advance in the event that I would get accepted. And so I definitely recommend that you all do that.
Thanks, Catherine. So knowing Nelson is from Nigeria, for example, and I know for us in Sub-Saharan Africa, it might not be realistic to try and find funding at the same time or before you have an application, because people will only give you that funding if they have the guarantee that you're finding yourself, you actually have the admission or the acceptance letter. So again, it's like you have to be aware. In Nelson, in your case, you have to be aware of what the situation is like in your context, and just take advantage. Just make sure you take advantage of the belts and avoid the pitfalls.
Yeah. I think on that note, it's been about an hour that we've been chatting. Thank you so much to everyone for being patient. I think we reached about 50 people. It's wonderful that you came to chat with us. And as we said throughout the presentation, we're all open to answer your questions. So reach out on social media, send us emails, if you want to connect with one of us specifically, I think Rima could kind of introduce you to us. And again, thank you to all my friends. It's always lovely to see your face and gather. Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you
Bye.
for joining.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.